Hey everybody, now Miigizi Johnston, and super excited to be here to help with building our bundle, season 5, episode 5. The title of this week's episode is Observing Through Constellations. This week we'll be learning how to look up into the sky and observe the constellations and actually use that as a way of looking within ourselves. We will be looking at the DBT teaching of the wise mind, the emotional mind, and the logical mind, and relating to that to traditional Anishinaabe teachings. And later on this episode, I will be announcing the photo challenge for this week with a chance to win actually one of the hats that I'm producing with Brimz Hats Boutique. One of my favorite things to do when I was growing up was actually going out at night and looking up at the stars, just looking up at the cosmos. And it would always really fascinate me when I would see the constellations, and I would go looking for stories about those constellations. As I started learning more about the constellations, I would apply it to, I guess, myself and my own teachings that I received growing up. One of the Anishinaabe teachings that I was given at a young age is that we're actually all connected to the stars, and that the Anishinaabe people are a sacred being that come from the stars, and we will travel back to the stars. Essentially, I was taught that we are connected to those stars and we are a part of those stars. So when I look up at these constellations, I'm actually looking at systems that represent myself. Within dialectical behavioral therapy, there's a philosophy that for the self, in our minds, in our brains, we have something called the wise mind, we have something called the logic mind, and we have something called the emotional mind. I love this teaching because I can relate it to my own teachings that I've learned about ourself and what makes up the whole self. The way I was taught is that we are spirit, which is infinite, which is from the stars, but to experience life on this planet, we need a physical vessel. And this physical vessel comes equipped with a brain. And in our brain is where our ego sits. I was taught that in our heart area is the lodge of the spirit. And that I was always going to have to not only process information and emotions through my ego, my brain, but I also had to connect it with my heart and my spirit and make decisions that represent, I guess, a collaboration between those two. I consider the emotional mind almost like, I guess, our heart or our spirit. And I consider the logical mind our ego or our brain. And the wise mind would be that synthesis or that collaboration of those two. When I think about this as well, I just think how there are 2 points that create a complete system, almost like when we look up at the stars. If we focus on the individual star, we won't see the beauty and the wonder that is the whole system, which is the whole constellation, which forms an image, that forms a story, that forms a teaching, that forms some knowledge, hopefully that I can gain some wisdom from. This week's activity, I want you to reflect on the DBT teachings of the wise mind, of the logical mind, and of the emotional mind. And think of an instance, I guess, where you completely reacted on emotions. And then think of another instance where you completely reacted on logic, like problem solving and scheduling and different things like that. And then think about, within those 2 scenarios, how or if you brought them together using that wise mind and connecting those 2, just like how we connect the mind and the spirit. After completing the activity, This week's photo challenge is I want you to go and take a picture of a constellation that's in our sky right now that best represents yourself, your whole self. Yeah, that's all for now. Miigwech.